So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, I just read a love letter from Patti, the CEO of PG&E. It's literally a love letter, and you can read it here. I'm showing the link over here. But please allow me to summarize that letter from Patti to all of the PG&E customers in California. Here we go. Dear PG&E customers, if you conserve electricity, we will raise your rates. If you use more electricity, your bills will go up. Either way, we make more money, and it's not our fault. With love, Patti. I can't make this up, and we'll have to bleep it because I never swear in this show, but boy, this is one of the times where it makes sense. The utilities in California, PG&E among them, is running roughshod over customers. They're spending money like drunken sailors on the most expensive grid upgrades instead of more cost-effective ways to serve customers. And they're using ratepayer money, our money, to lobby politicians for utility-friendly laws and regulations. California politicians, from Gavin Newsom on down, are implementing blatantly anti-solar policies like eliminating net metering, preventing solar contractors from installing batteries in commercial solar, removing incentives for schools to install rooftop solar, cracking down on community solar for apartment dwellings, and promoting the blatant cost shift lie that solar is bad for poor people. As a result, there's been a 70% drop in solar sales in California, a collapse of the commercial solar industry, and the end result in California right now, we have the second highest electric rates in the country. Pretty soon we'll pass Hawaii. And on top of that, no surprise, because this was the goal all along, record utility profits. What do? So the Solar Rights Alliance was founded to leverage the millions of solar and storage enthusiasts in California to offset all the fake news that solar and storage is bad for the grid and bad for customers. Their mantra is everyone should have the right to generate his or her own power directly from the sun, and that no monopoly company or special interest should try to block or own the sun. And it's my pleasure to have Dave Rosenfeld, the Executive Director of the Solar Rights Alliance, back here. He's doing a terrific job building the Solar Rights Alliance, and he's one of the most passionate and articulate voices on behalf of solar customers. He's also an alumnus of Rutgers, my home state's university. So welcome back to the show, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Go RU.
yeah. I went to my daughter's graduation down there. There's a lot of people that I know still there, so it's good. So tell us a little bit more about the Solar Rights Alliance.
Yeah, we're the nonprofit association of California solar customers. We believe that everyone has the right to make energy from the sun without unreasonable interference from the utility or the government. We keep track of what the politicians and the regulators and the utilities are up to. And then we alert solar customers when there is a threat to their investment or an opportunity to make solar more available and batteries more available to more people. And we have about 150,000 supporters around the state. And what we found is that when solar customers are given good information and actionable things that they can do to make their voices heard, they speak up. And so our goal is to make sure that the voices of solar customers are heard loud and clear in the halls of power and can counterbalance just the way too much influence that the utilities and their sycophants and their pals have over decisions in California.
So how can people get in touch with the Solar Rights Alliance? How can they join?
Yeah, it's very easy. You just go to our website. That's the easiest thing. And that's solarrights.org. So first word is solar, second word is rights, like the Bill of Rights, string it together, add a .org. There's a big button at the top that says sign up. It's free to sign up. If you want to donate, you're free to do that. You're also free not to do that. Mostly, we just want you on our list so that we can tell you what's going on and that you have the option then to use your voice to stop bad things and promote good things.
All right, so let's dive into some of the bad things that are going on. PG&E keeps applying for rate increases. Do you have any idea what they're asking for over the next couple of years in California?
The numbers, I've started to just lose track because it's like, it's every couple of months they go, oh, actually, we need another double-digit rate increase and then another double-digit rate increase. And they just don't seem to stop. And they keep warning that, yes, there's going to be more coming down the pipe. And this isn't just like a right now thing. Over the last 20 years, PG&Es and the rest of the major private utilities, their spending on poles and wires alone has increased 300%. And so that's just over the last 20 years. And now here we are looking forward to the next 10, 20 years. And that spending spree, like you said, spending like drunken sailors, shows no sign of abating. If anything, it looks like it's increasing.
Well, I hear the messaging about all the demand for AI and EVs by 2035 and all green energy by 2045 and heat pump. And it sounds like the messaging is we're going to need even more electricity. So that's PG&E code for saying we want more money, and that's going to make rates go up more. It's amazing, and not a surprise to hear that you can't even keep track of it because it's just so common. So let's talk a little bit. This is one of the outstanding things you did last year, kind of keeping track of how much money the utilities and their employees are giving to California politicians. Is PG&E continuing that? Are we seeing even more politicians take big bucks from PG&E from the governor on down?
Yeah. So just to take a step back, the PG&E and the other three major utilities and their labor union, this is really important to include their labor union, and we can talk about kind of what their role is in all of this stuff. But since the year 2000, the utilities have given more than I'm going to say this, $1 billion
Wow.
in direct contributions to politicians on lobbying expenditures and just payments to nonprofit organizations, academics, trade associations, local chambers of commerce. It's like they spread their money like a crop duster, across pretty much every segment of society. They don't limit it to politics because what they want to do is they want to buy loyalty, they want to buy silence, they want to buy goodwill. They want to just get everyone to shut up, get in line, and let PG&E just get their spending rubber stamped, rubber stamped, rubber stamped. And so Governor Newsom, is our current top elected official. He has taken more than any other politician from the utilities, $2.5 million. Most of that came around the time of the recall, and the utilities labor union stepped in and spent big to help him out there. And he is paying them back real good. I mean, Governor Newsom has pretty much showed all of his cards at this point and has shown that he is willing to repeat the utility lies about rooftop solar. He is aggressively implementing the utilities agenda to try to destroy rooftop solar. And, it's showing no sign of abating. Most recently, he's put out an executive order. This was in October, that repeated lies, blames rooftop solar for high electricity rates, but then also lies that the next step, and this is what we're expecting, is he wants to now go after the contracts of the 2 million solar customers who are on NEM1 and NEM2 and open up those grandfathering agreements and cancel them. So we have a big fight ahead of us this next year, and it's all because of the utility spending, payments or legalized bribery to politicians and every other level of government.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so I've got some discussion points on that in a little while, but I want to kind of tune things back to current events. Preliminary indications are that Southern California Edison utility wires caused the Eaton wildfires in Altadena, California. What can be done about stopping the utility wires from causing those fires?
Yeah, I mean, so this is tricky, right? We want to see all the facts come out, right? So this is preliminary evidence. We don't want to jump to any conclusions, but we also know that there's a long history in California of power lines sparking wildfires. So if that turns out to be true, it's, just another chapter in a very, very sad and destructive and damaging story. As long as we have a grid with power lines, there's going to be a danger of wildfires, and we have to take steps to make sure that we mitigate those risks. Obviously, one thing is just to de-energize those power lines during a wildfire event, and that's the thing. But we're not asking the right questions in California, because we need to be thinking about, like, how can we just reduce the need to be reliant on long distance power lines to begin with? And actually, I want to just go a little bit backwards in time, Barry, to kind of come forward, which is, remember when I said earlier that utility spending on poles and wires increased 300% over the last 20 years? You could hear that and go, well, I'm sure there was a good reason for that. It turns out there isn't, because you would think, okay, well, they did that because the population and the economy were growing, which they were. But here's the thing, peak electricity demand over that time period was flat. So even though population and economy were growing, over the last 20 years, peak electricity demand was flat. And you know why it was flat? Rooftop solar. All that extra energy that was being used over the last 20 years was soaked up by the 2 million solar systems that were being installed around that time period. So the utilities still spent, even though they didn't need to meet more demand. You might then think, oh, well, that was because of wildfire mitigation. But this was before wildfire mitigation was really ramping up. And even today, it's only 12% of utility total spending. It's important and it's growing and we have to deal with it. But it does not explain the rate hikes. What explains the rate hikes is utility overspending on poles and wires that was not necessary. And no one can really say exactly why, what it was for and why, because the regulators just rubber stamped it without auditing it or scrutinizing it.
Yeah.
So now here we are today. And the utilities are again screaming, we need to build more power lines. We need to put them underground. We need to do all of these things to protect you from wildfires and to meet future electricity demand. And so we're in the same position. And I think the question is, probably we're going to have to do a lot of things to protect ourselves from wildfires with long distance power lines. And we probably are going to have to build more power lines in order to meet future electricity demand, data centers, and that kind of thing. But for God's sake, can't we just learn a lesson and go, why don't we first take a look at how do we maximize putting solar panels on more rooftops, getting a battery attached to them, and reducing the need to have to build and maintain those power lines? That's the first order of business, is reduce the need to have to build these things to begin with. Then we can turn our attention to what more do we need to be doing, and how do we harden the existing power lines? How do we make them more resistant to sparking fires, et cetera, et cetera? That's the direction the state has to go in. And that would be good, not just for rooftop solar in the industry, but good for all Californians, because we can finally control our electricity rates and make our power lines less likely to spark wildfires.
It's interesting kind of looking at what form of electricity is most expensive. Obviously, solar photovoltaic is dirt cheap to generate electricity. But I started looking at a correlation between where the energy sources are, where the power plants are, where the oil wells are, where the geothermal plants are, and where we're using it. And the farther away that source of energy is, whether it's a utility scale plant, geothermal, a nuclear reactor somewhere far away from population centers, the farther away that generation source is from the people and the buildings that need it, the more expensive that electricity is. That includes natural gas, that includes oil, that includes everything. And solar farms are really, really cheap when you build them in the desert. But by the time that electricity gets to us, it's really expensive. It's as expensive as natural gas. So it's amazing. All right, let's shift gears into the cost shift discussion. What are the blatant utility lies that utilities are saying about this cost shift that's causing rates to increase?
Yeah, the utilities falsely, I will say falsely several times, just so this does not get taken out of context. There's no way an AI is going to defeat this statement. The utilities falsely claim that rooftop solar users don't pay their fair share for the grid. And thus, every time that you make your own energy, you are shifting the cost of the grid to the people who don't have solar, because the costs of the grid are, they falsely claim, are fixed. And so if you don't pay, then somebody else has to pay. It's a total lie. I know we're going to unpack why, but that's the core of the claim: is solar users don't pay their fair share of the grid, and thus they shift the cost of the grid to the people who don't have solar. It's false. It's a lie. It has nothing to do with why electricity rates are so high. And in fact, the opposite is true. And I assume you're going to ask me lots of follow-up questions on exactly why that's the case.
Well, I'm going to ask you to unpack it, and let's talk about the specific reasons and the places where they're doing an incorrect analysis to come up with a false result.
Yeah. So first, let's just repeat, why are electricity rates so high? They are high because of utility spending increases. That's why. More than 90% of the rate hikes are directly correlated to utility spending on poles and wires. That's what drives up rates. It is the most expensive part. Anytime PG&E puts out propaganda that says otherwise, they are just lying. They are lying. And it shouldn't surprise you that they lie. They're a convicted criminal. Convicted criminals tend to lie, and that's PG&E. So that's why rates are going up, is because of that. So then rooftop solar, what's the role that rooftop solar plays? Rooftop solar, and increasingly batteries, reduces the need to have to build poles and wires. And as a result, rooftop solar actually saves ratepayers money because it reduces the cost of the overall grid. Richard McCann is an energy economist. He recently took a look at the latest cost shift claim that was made by an arm of the CPUC. They claimed that rooftop solar was causing an $8.5 billion cost shift in 2024 alone. Richard found that their math was completely incorrect, like in really obvious ways that anyone could kind of see if you bothered to look under the hood, and found that once you actually accounted for the fact that rooftop solar reduces the need to spend on poles and wires and whatnot, that actually in 2024 alone, rooftop solar saved all ratepayers $1.5 billion. Saved. So all ratepayers, $1.5 billion. So the truth is that rooftop solar is a key way that we can control utility spending and thus control electricity rates and save the whole state money. And so the implications for state policy are enormous. If we had leaders that had their heads screwed on straight, we have a solution staring us in the face that's good for individual consumers and good for the entire state. And all we need are just leaders that aren't so captured by the utilities that they can see that and push those things forward.
All right, so that makes total sense. But rates are going to continue to go up. We see this happening. And in addition to increasing the rates, they've started to implement what's called a fixed charge. I think right now it's $24 a month for every single person. That's another almost $300. And then on top of that, they want to keep raising it. I mean, PG&E has to raise it for over $100 on an income graduated basis. So that's going to keep going up. If you have these high fixed charges and high electric rates, are people going to start to say, hey, do I really need to be connected to the grid? Are they going to start to try and defect from the grid, cut the cord?
Yeah, I think that definitely. I mean, look, assuming that the price of solar and the price of batteries are going to continue to come down, right? The relevance of the grid becomes less. I mean, if the cost of solar and batteries continues to go down, and we know the cost of being connected to the grid is going to continue to go up, then the economics are already telling us where things are going. People are going to opt towards generating. Right now, people are opting towards generating some of their electricity because that's usually what's available to them. The instant that people can affordably generate and store all of their electricity, they're going to do it. And the utilities could be a partner in all of that and maintain their relevance in the system, of which there are lots of reasons why the utilities could continue to be relevant in electrical grid. There's no reason for it to be just one or the other. But if the utilities continue to fight and fight and fight and just go, no, it's all or nothing, we're either a complete monopoly or forget about it, then yeah, I think that is a scenario that could happen. And I'm not sure that that's optimal. Like, I think it would be better to have a holistic system that would be the most resilient one that provides the most backup. But the utilities in their greed are pushing consumers into a corner. And in the end, good technology solutions will win the day.
Yep.
We saw this with every single technology. So they're fighting a losing battle. And the question is just how much collateral damages there are going to be to everyday people in the course of this fight.
Yeah. And in the meantime, they're making a ton of money. The executives make a ton of money. The stockholders doing great. The utilities are going to show record profits. Now, when it comes to technology, I agree with you that price of solar is coming down, the price of batteries are coming down. But the big thing that's going to change the market right now, as far as what I call grid defection, is people are driving around in their cars with 100 kilowatt hour batteries. And I know at my house, the moment I can plug my vehicle into the house to use the energy in the battery at night on really cold nights like we've been having, or maybe really, really hot nights, but it's usually cold nights in the winter, the moment I can do that to keep my heat pump running, I'm done. I'll deplete the battery in the vehicle by maybe 10 kilowatt hours or 20 kilowatt hours. I'll fill it up again the next day at work, or even plug it in at a high-speed charging station. Super easy. So that's the technology I think that's going to be a game changer for people cutting the cord. And, I'm just worried that the utilities are going to push really, really hard for a tax, a fixed charge that's based on income, regardless of even if you're connected to the grid. So we'll see what happens with that.
We'll see what happens. Right.
Yeah.
The utility strategy is very, very clear. Like, first, it was to kill off the credit that you get for sharing your extra energy with the grid. And they mostly succeeded in doing that. Now what they're doing is wanting to reach behind the meter, right? This isn't about the extra energy you give to the grid. This is about going right onto your property and saying, we're either going to stop you from being able to use your own electricity. So this is what they did with schools and with farms and with apartment buildings that you alluded to that earlier. Or in the case of residential homeowners, what they want to do is slap you with as many taxes as possible, regardless of how much electricity you use, to claw back all of the savings you get from making your own electricity. This is the central fight, and we're in a race against time because, as you say, if the utilities succeed at doing that, it just won't make sense to get the solar and the battery, and the market starts to stagnate, and we're not going to see those same sorts of price drops. So this is the big fight, everyone who's listening, and you have to drop what you're doing the instant that you hear that there is the next solar tax proposal that you hear, the next time you hear that they want to raise the utility tax from $24 a month to something else, or the next wackadoodle thing that comes from the governor, saying that we need to cancel the contracts for NEM1 and NEM2, you've got to stop what you're doing and you've got to raise holy, holy hell with your assembly members and senators, because we do have friends in the legislature, but The only people that are going to give them a spine is you, the listener.
Yeah, I agree. And a couple of other things that they're doing is they want to add an insurance requirement for people installing more solar and batteries. Darn, I should say. What about insurance for Moss Landing that's burning right now? But
right.
they want to add insurance requirement. They're also trying to set it up so that every EV charger has to be bidirectional so that the utility can benefit from that energy in the vehicle. I think it's good if they're going to pay people reasonable compensation, but if they just want to take that energy for pennies like they're doing with rooftop solar, it doesn't make sense. And then increasing that fixed charge.
Totally. Every time I see vehicle to grid, I'm like, hold up. It's my car. First order of business is vehicle to home. I can choose if I want to send some of that to the grid. So again, it's like these technocrats and bureaucrats and then politicians, they're just thinking about this from a completely like, how does this benefit the utility? And we need to put the consumer at the center of all stuff.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about politics. I think it's a total lost cause, hoping that Governor Newsom is going to change his spots. Until he's out of office, he's going to continue to do everything he possibly can that's going to benefit from the utilities. What can we do to restore the focus on solar? And the good news is there's going to be a governor's race in a year. How could we make sure that the next governor that's elected is not completely in the pockets of the utility? What are some of the strategies there?
Very, very important question. And just to kind of, for people who are listening, sometimes people say what you're saying and then they go, oh, well, we've got to go reform the CPUC. And it's like, just remember, everybody, the CPUC is the governor. So all these agencies, the governor interferes with all of their stuff. There's political interference going on. This is always the case. This is not unique to Newsom. So Governor Newsom, he will not change his spots, which means that the CPUC and all the other agencies will not change their spots. So it's good. That clarifies the mind to just kind of go, what are we focusing on here? So what we believe is that this is why we ought to be cultivating and building up and educating any other politician in the state that is either about to get power or currently has power that has not completely sold their soul to the utilities, of which there actually are a considerable number. For example, in this last legislative session in 2024, an almost supermajority of the legislature passed a bill that would have restored the right of schools and farms and apartment buildings to make their own energy, which was something that literally was taken away by the CPUC. They sent that bill to the governor. The governor vetoed it. That's bad. But the fact that a near supermajority of the legislature voted to defend the basic right to make your own energy on your property without interference is a really, really big deal. And there were a lot of legislators who stepped up to push that bill through in the committee hearings when the utilities and their allies were repeating the same lies during testimony. We saw more and more legislators finding their voice and pushing back in really articulate ways and going, that's not right. Rooftop solar actually saves all ratepayers money. We ought to be making more of that. So we need to continue to cultivate our legislators first and foremost. I think that's really, really important. We need to educate them about how the utilities are lying. We need to show them what actually is driving electricity rates. We need to show them how rooftop solar is actually a tool to reduce electricity rates for everybody. And then we need to do the same thing with the candidates for the governor. And we should not give up on anybody. This is a chance for, you may think, well, gosh, I'll let the experts do that. Please don't think that way. We do have a lot of experts who are meeting with legislators and candidates for governor, and we're doing a lot of that ourselves. But there is nothing like someone like you, the listener, if you're out and about and you have a chance to go to a town hall meeting or a meet and greet, or to write a letter or to make a phone call to anyone who's either running for governor or who currently represents you in the legislature, you should take the opportunity to go and do it. I cannot say enough how powerful we've seen how that has been. Numerous legislators have told us that the thing that really got them was when they had a critical mass of constituents just show up at a meet and greet in the district and just give them a piece of their mind about this thing. And they realized that this thing really was real, what we're saying. And our website has so many resources for you to do that. And you can always email us if you want a one-on-one consultation. And we will walk through with you literally the steps to doing any of the things that I'm talking about. So you really are the key to doing all of this stuff. And I swear that we're doing it as well as professionals, but it's got to be a 1-2 punch of professionals and everyday people who are out there making the case to these up and coming and existing decision makers who have not been corrupted in the way that Governor Newsom has.
I mean, for me, there's a red line question that I'm going to ask anybody that's looking to run for governor. And the red line question is, are you going to be taking money from the utilities and their employees? And if the answer is yes, then I will basically say, I and anyone else I know, we will not be voting for you. And I will also contribute to the politicians that sign that pledge, sign that promise that they will be working on behalf of electricity customers throughout the state instead of taking money from PG&E. And it really nauseates me to see how much money politicians who actually used to be very much in favor of rooftop solar have completely changed their mind as they take all that money from the utilities.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, the money talks. The only thing I'll say, Barry, is that we have seen that there are a number of elected officials in the legislature who take money from the utilities or their labor union who have done the right thing, who have stood up. And so it's just to say, I think what you're encouraging people to do is good, just to kind of like create some red lines and just realize that they can't just take this money without there being some kind of consequence. On the other hand, let's not underestimate too that we can be a true counterbalance. In other words, they take the money because that's just kind of politics. But then, when they're confronted with a decision, there's going to be hell to pay from their constituents. So they sometimes are going to have to say to their political benefactors, sorry, give me something else that I'm going to be with you on, but it ain't going to be this thing about rooftop solar because it's too popular. So we have to play both. We have to do both things. And it's sort of like all of the above. Like we have to be hard asses and we also have to just push, 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 even for people that have been somewhat muddied by the corrupting influence of the utilities.
Yeah. Well, put me in the hard ass category because I'm
Totally.
not going to be shy about saying to whomever it is, if, looking at those numbers, and if it was an accident, you accidentally took $1,000, I'm going to kind of look the other way. But the people that take tens of thousands or more, not only will they not get my vote, but I'll do everything I can to make sure that they don't get the vote from everybody else I know. Anyway. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
all right.
That's great.
All right. Well, we covered a lot of ground. I'm just kind of wrapping up. How did you get into the solar industry?
Yeah. So going back to around like 2003, 2004, I was the organizing director for a statewide public interest consumer group. And we were working with the group of people, which included an organization called Environment California. And we were working to convince Governor Schwarzenegger and the legislature to go big on rooftop solar. The governor had made a promise on the campaign trail for 1 million solar powered rooftops. And a lot of us said, well, that's great, and we took him seriously at his word. And there was a whole campaign to get him to fulfill his promise. Of course, when he got elected, it wasn't so easy because then, he has his advisors and the advisors like, come on, you don't really want to do that because, whatever. But the governor, to his credit, Governor Schwarzenegger, once he was reminded of the campaign promise he made, he was like, yeah, I want that. And so I was a part of that. And at the time, just if you just think back to 2005, when the Million Solar Roofs Initiative went into effect, you were there because you've been around a long time, there wasn't that much solar in the state. I think there was like 20,000 solar systems. They were pretty expensive, so you had to be pretty wealthy to get it, or you had to be kind of like really, really technical, like a ham radio kind of person to like, put it on yourself. Certainly wasn't something that everyday people could get. And I remember a bunch of us, after the legislature passed the law and Schwarzenegger signed it, we were at a bar just talking about how awesome this was going to be and trying to imagine what it would be like to have 1 million rooftops. We have 2 million now, but like at the time it was a little mini me, we were like 1 million. And I forget who said it, but we were like, we're going to need to start a consumer group. There's going to be 1 million customers one day, and there should be a consumer group because the utilities are most certainly going to try to hit back. And we want to make sure that there's a constituency to defend and keep this whole thing going. So I remember that conversation and I remember saying, well, gosh, sign me up. I want to run that group, when that happens.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how many years later, but about 13 years later, I found myself kind of in between work and I was kind of looking for something new. I'm a community organizer. I love organizing people and I love different kind of projects. And I just wound down a project helping to bring back career technical education for high schoolers. I'm a big fan of pathways to a middle class life that don't require you having to go to a 4-year university. And I had been doing that. And I had been reminded by some of my friends who stayed in the solar world that we were about to hit 1 million customers and that I had said that I wanted to start the consumer group. And so I had to kind of stick to my word. And so that was around 2018, started the Solar Rights Alliance. And, 150,000 supporters now. We're just scratching the surface of what's possible. And it's really awesome. Solar customers are awesome. Solar's awesome. Solar customers are awesome. And we have a big fight ahead of us for, this fight is about freedom. And I love fights that are about freedom.
Well, Yeah, believe it or not, Jigger Shaw and I in 2012 were thinking about how to start this thing up. And we really were, kicking around some ideas, but it wasn't really until Bernadette got in there and that, we started pushing it within CALSA. And Dave, I'm just so glad that you landed in the top spot because you're just doing such a terrific job.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And back at you. You were keeping this alive, right? Like back when it was really, really hard multiple times. And you showed that, entrepreneurialism and hard work and a good product, that consumers want it. And you've really shown just how to build an industry and have been a backbone of that. And I really respect and admire that.
It's just passion. It's just passion and the fact that I don't know how to do anything else. So I'm just really happy to be doing this and working with great people like you. So once again,
great people from New Jersey,
from Jersey. Yes. And we're not easy to push around. All right. Just one more time. How can people get in touch with the Solar Rights Alliance?
The easiest way to get in touch with us is to go to our website, www.solarrights.org. You could also just Google Solar Rights Alliance. The same thing will pop up. There's a button that says sign up. Sign up. It's free to sign up. Once you're on our list, it's really, really easy to get the information. I promise you, we don't sell or share your information with anyone. This is like bedrock for us. We don't over email you. I hate organizations that send like way too many emails. I swear to you, like we're really, really good at this. This is my promise to you. You can also email us directly, info@solarrights.org. We have a zero inbox policy. We try to respond to every single inquiry that comes in. We take that very, very seriously as well. We want to hear from you and we want you to sign up. That is how together we can have power to defend everyone's right to make energy from the sun.
And also, just if anybody's wondering, the communications that I get from the Solar Rights Alliance, they're great. They're timely, they're interesting, they're entertaining, they're actionable. So it's not like you get spammed. It's just, I look forward to get those emails. All right. That's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks, Dave, for joining me on this week's show. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. If you missed any of today's show, you can always go to our website at www.energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.